Parliament for Washington and Gateshead South, and if the accent hasn't given you a clue, that's in the northeast of England. Thank you all for coming. Sorry for the sort of disjoint this start, and with the different panel to maybe who you were expecting, and a few minutes late start, but as you know, it's raining and very busy, and everyone in the whole of the world seems to be at Labour Party conference this year. I wonder why. It definitely wasn't this busy last year, the year before, or maybe many of the last 14 years, but it's a nice problem to have, like wading through the crowds and losing your sort of staff and everything in the crowd. I wish I was a foot taller. It's definitely hard to find people when you're only 5'5". Okay, so here we are. Thank you all. So I've had many shadow ministerial briefs, and I've done lots of stuff over the years with warm homes when we were in government and in opposition. Was on the all-party group for warm homes and fuel poverty. Then you'll remember when the Tories got in, they reset all the sort of measures of fuel poverty. You know, they reset the measures for what classed as being in childhood poverty, but they did the same with fuel poverty. So it's very interesting to look at what's happened over the last 14 years and what we're going to do going forward to help sort of sort all of this out. So I'm looking forward to this discussion today immensely. We've only got around 50 minutes, so we'll have to motor. So we're joined today by Harpreet Upal, who's PPS to Angela Rayner. Apologies from Miata, who unfortunately is in the chamber or the conference hall for having to listen to whoever it is who's up speaking now that we're all missing. We have also got Tom Ross on my left, Green City Region portfolio holder for Greater Manchester. Then we've got David Brissenden on the far right. Just geography-wise, stage left, yes. Head of Policy and Public Affairs at Cenergist. Uma Kumaran is on her way. She'll be here about 3:30. She's the MP for Stratford and Bow. But we've also got Johan Duplessis. I've probably done that wrong again. CEO and founder of Tepeo, and Jack Abbott on my right, MP for Ipswich. So 1, 2, 3, you're going to have 4 MPs, where some fringes have been lucky to have one, so you are spoiled for choice here today. So what I will do, which way do you want me to go? Do you want me to start with you, Harpreet, or would you like to start? Right, I think because of time, it says here, I'm sure it says you get a minute, which seems impossible, but if you go to 90 seconds, I'm not going to chase you. But if you get to 2 to 2.5 minutes, I might make a fuss.
Gotcha.
So over to you, David.
So I'm David Brissenden, Head of Policy and Public Affairs at Cenergist. Let me know if you can't hear me. We basically focus on 2 things. One is decarbonisation of the built environment. So we deliver to individual homes, air source heat pumps, insulation, a full technology agnostic approach. And then on the larger scale, we decarbonise large buildings. So that can be designing and delivering our own shared ground loops for social housing, or large-scale air source heat pump networks for schools, hospitals, and the like, so public buildings. And then we tap into any government availability funds to cover the cost and reduce the capex of those projects. And then on the other side, we have a patented piece of technology which reduces water consumption in the built environment as well. Has a knock-on effect of reducing bills on your water, but also on your energy bills. So if you have a gas boiler, it will reduce your bills. But also has the benefit of unlocking homes stuck in planning through nutrient and water scarcity as well. So I think that's about a minute.
Well done, David. You've set a high bar. Johan.
I'm going to try and be quicker. So, Johan Duplessis, I'm the CEO at Tepeo. Tepeo we're a mission-driven business, first and foremost, developing products that help tackle the decarbonisation of domestic heating primarily, obviously through electrification. And our product that we currently sell is called a ZEB, or a zero-emission boiler. It is a heat battery. And some of you may not have heard of heat batteries, but heat batteries are a great low-carbon domestic heating solution, a drop-in replacement for a gas oil LPG boiler, but without some of the hassles associated with other alternatives. And I think I've got some time later to tell you a bit more about what we're doing. So that's probably enough for now.
Excellent, thank you.
So Jack Abbott, the MP of Ipswich. I've actually worked around the renewable and clean tech sector for most of my working career, so there's a real professional sort of perspective here for me as well. But for many of you will also know Ipswich is on the doorstep of the energy coast. We're going to be hopefully hosting Sizewell C. A huge amount of offshore wind development, solar, obviously the national grid too. But while all those projects of national significance are occurring here in our county, there is also a real need not to forget about the domestic element here as well in terms of the energy transition. So as a political priority, these are the areas that I'm going to be really looking on, not just because we want to do our part to becoming cleaner, greener and everything else, but making sure that kids growing up in Ipswich have an opportunity to get a secure, well-paid jobs, or people have the opportunity to upskill. There's a real economic opportunity for us if we grasp that in front of us. So, as I say, from the big kind of industrial scale size projects right through to domestic, that will be something I'll be really focusing on as an MP over the next 5 years.
Excellent, thanks Jack. And Tom?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Ross, the Green City Region Portfolio Holder in Greater Manchester Combined Authority and leader of Trafford Council. From a GM perspective, this topic, really important topic, touches so much of what we want to do as a combined authority, whether it be lifting people out of fuel poverty, looking at the retrofitting of houses, looking at the housing standards both in the private and the social sectors, what we do there to make things better for the people that live there, how do we save them money and help them out of poverty. Whether it be the skills is a big thing within Greater Manchester. We've identified that we do have a skills gap where it comes to the new alternative energy provision. We're very lucky that we're exploring with our colleges how to get more skilled people into those jobs, such as fitting, heat pumps and other things connected to the new energies. The other thing that we're looking at is strategically. So as a Green City Region portfolio holder, we are exploring local area energy plans. So each of the 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester are looking at that. We're also exploring the different kinds of energy provision we can look at through district heat networks. And finally, from me, in terms of the housing vision that we have for Greater Manchester, we have had Places for Everyone, which is a huge planning document that we agreed. It took 10 years, but we agreed it earlier this year. And as part of that, looking at new housing, how we link that to district heat networks, and if that's not possible, looking at making them as eco-friendly as possible.
Excellent, thank you Tom. Harpreet.
Thank you Sharon. So try and get this working.
It's alive.
It is alive, yeah. Hi, my name's Harpreet and I'm the new MP for Huddersfield. I'm also the PPS, try and get that right, the acronym right, PPS Angela Rayner and the Housing, Communities and Local Government team. Obviously this is a really important agenda. In terms of technical expertise, I'm not the person to be asking other colleagues here, particularly with Jack's background as well. They'll be able to answer the more technical stuff. But obviously, as a part of our plans, we want to build 1.5 million new homes. So the energy standards of those new homes will be really important. There's the MPPF consultation that's ongoing, which I think the deadline's tomorrow, so just worth considering that. And then also, obviously, we've got the Labour government has the Warm Homes plan as well to look at retrofitting. And just a small example, we had a small retrofit scheme in Huddersfield in one of our council estates. It was 6 homes. The cost per unit of that was quite high, but the benefit that it had to residents was fantastic, and the Huddersfield University have been doing some research on that as well to look at the benefits. And also we saw there were some issues there potentially around the green skills agenda, but also real opportunities to be able to develop those skills in Huddersfield and beyond.
And beyond, yes, excellent. So that is your wonderful panel. We're going to be joined by one more MP, hopefully Uma Kumaran, who will get here in time for the Q&A. Just a couple of things I wanted to say. The national emergency of rising energy bills has again highlighted the urgent importance of insulating as many homes as possible. And the UK spends more money on energy wasted through our walls and our roofs of our houses than any other country in Western Europe. It's quite a shocking stat, that one. Upgrading the energy efficiency of homes would reduce energy demand, thereby cutting bills for families and building the UK's energy security. This comes after a decade, of course, of failure by the previous Conservative government to introduce a proper national energy efficiency plan. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to hear 2 short presentations and then we'll open it up to questions. So first of all, can I ask Johan to give us his presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Not so much a presentation as just a 5-minute monologue, which we'll try and keep engaging. So I'm here to help people think differently, and my opening line here is that we have fallen into the trap of making the electrification of heat synonymous with heat pumps, and they are very different things. And it is clear that we have to electrify heating. It is the way we're going to decarbonise. It's also the way we're going to deliver people affordable heating. We can talk more about that. But I want to give you an example of 2 people. Mitch lives just outside Stratford in a terraced house. Natasha lives in Bedfordshire in a flat. And for these 2 people, they have tried to decarbonise their home. They've tried to do the right thing. And in both cases, they've been told they don't have the outdoor space to install a heat pump, or they don't have the infrastructure to install a heat pump. Heat pumps are a really big part of the solution here, just to be absolutely clear. But Mitch and Natasha represent at least 20% of homes in this country. And people like Mitch and Natasha today who want to try and change don't have an option that is supported by government policy because they can't install a heat pump. So what they do typically is they would then go and install another gas boiler. And this is why in the last 12 months, as in the 12 months before that, there were about 1.6 million gas boilers installed in the UK. And to put that in comparison, that's about 16,000 heat pumps installed through the boiler upgrade scheme in retrofit in the last 12 months. So around 1%. So this is the problem. And part of the problem is that consumers are lacking choice. But the good news is we're only looking at half of the equation. And the frustrating thing for me is if you're in the energy sector, you will know that you pretty much cannot escape a report from the national grid, from the DNOs, from the distribution network operators, from the think tanks, calling for more flexibility in the system. We need flexibility to soak up excess wind. And in fact, in the last year, we paid £920 million to wind turbines to stop generating, when at the same time we have people in fuel poverty not able to heat their homes throughout the winter. And Ed wants us to quadruple wind generation to 2030, and the National Grid expects that by sometime in the mid-2030s we'll be having to curtail 10% of all generation in this country. That's not just wind, that's all generation in this country, if we don't have enough flexibility in our system. But the good news is we have solutions today, and heat batteries, such as our product, but other products are available. Heat batteries can give you the same heating performance as a gas boiler. They're a drop-in replacement for central heating. They give you the same high temperature output as gas boilers, oil boilers, LPG boilers, and they allow you to heat your home in a cost comparable way with heat pumps because of that flexibility, because we can mop up excess wind, because we can make best use of flexibility throughout the year and through the winter. And our argument is that actually by being serious about electrification more broadly and thinking a bit more pragmatically about how we're going to electrify homes, giving consumers more choice, we will all get there much, much faster, and we'll stop putting off the 20% of homes that are currently being turned away and getting disillusioned by the whole process and thinking this is not for me, I'm just going to put another gas boiler in. Pleased to say, the Clean Heat team within DESNZ has been very supportive of the technology category, and for the last 2 years they've been working with HMRC and the Treasury to extend VAT relief for heat batteries for central heating. It got approved last autumn by the minister at the time, but then fell at the final hurdle with the HMRC legal team. It is an easy first step to make sure that heat batteries get the same treatment as heat pumps, and so we're hoping that Minister Murray makes the right decision in the upcoming statement to make this sort of oven-ready plan happen, and to give an option basically to all homes to enable them to decarbonise their heating. So that's really what I had to say. I think I'm happy to take more questions later about the products, how they work, without getting too much into the technical details. But I think my parting message is, we need to bring consumers along with us on this journey. If we try and force them down a road and say, this is your solution, you have to have this, we're going to lose them, especially when they're then told by the industry they can't have that solution in their home.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Johan. So that was about increasing the energy mix out there in the country. So now we're going to hear from David, who's going to speak about the cost effectiveness of energy efficiency. So David.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to give you a bit of a policy example of what happens if you don't have a technology agnostic approach. So one of the things we look at is government has given us £6.6 billion to deliver this scheme. And unless these guys on the panel can tell us differently, I don't think that number's going to be going up anytime soon. So what we need to reassure them as a country and as a supply chain is that we can help as many homes as possible with that money and show that that's a good investment in us, essentially. So I wanted to pick up on eco as a policy. So energy companies' obligation. For those who don't know, it's kind of the flagship fuel poverty policy. It's been around under various names for the best part of 20 years. And over those 20 years, it has evolved to become a relatively technology agnostic policy to one that's not particularly technology agnostic comparatively. And what's happened is the policy costs have almost spiraled to the point where only sort of 30% of the money is actually going towards the measures themselves being delivered into people's homes. So if we rewind the clock to what it used to be called, so CERT-CESP, so that's around 2008, 2009 to about 2012. If we look at pounds per tonne of carbon as the metric of success here, those policies were working at respectively £14 and £33 per tonne of carbon per pound. So pretty good return on investment. Then we moved into eco, so that's 2013 onwards, and that's when things started to become more restricted, less market-based mechanism. You are only able to deliver measures that save save money on your heating bill, so not electricity, not your hot water, just heating, and obviously then only technologies that could be replicated and shown via an EPC. Up to 2022, it was £100 per tonne of carbon. Eco 4, what we're currently at, and there's a couple of years left on that, in the pre-programme impact assessment, £250 per tonne of carbon. And anyone who has any experience with eco, that number will be much higher by the close of the scheme. So one of the arguments that you hear is, all the low-hanging fruit's done, all the simple stuff's done, so obviously the cost is going to rise. If you look at the delivery, 30% of Eco 4, so the last 2 years, has been boilers, cavity wall insulation, loft insulation. 48% has been heating controls. So 78% of all measures under Eco has been fairly traditional, fairly low impact, fairly low intervention, simple cost, low cost measures. And yet we have this really high cost per tonne of carbon. So where's this come from? Really, there's a number of factors which 5 minutes isn't going to let it, but I will try and do a few bits. Basically, we're pushing measures that aren't good investments for a lot of homes. So although I fully support insulation as a measure that is incredibly useful and should be rolled out as well as many homes as possible where it is achievable, we're within these policies creating artificial incentives for things like cladding where it has a return on investment of 50 or 100 years. It's not a good investment, whereas an air source heat pump with some limited insulation on that home, higher capacity, higher temperature heat network, heat pump, will return investment on 7 to 10 years. So we have to look at this as a financial decision. The other one is we're excluding new technologies that come on. So this supply chain is very innovative, so Tepeo being an example, can't deliver your system through eco because it's not replicable on eco. Similarly, our water tech, which saves money on water and energy bills, can't either. The process to getting a technology that can be represented on EPC can be 18 months, 2 years, and incredibly onerous. So not many people do it. The other factors is search costs. So finding a home that is suitable for a smaller list of technologies is going to balloon the cost to the supply chain to find those homes lead generation network increases their prices. Whereas if you have a wide range of technologies you can deliver, LED lighting, for example, you have an easier way to get into people's homes, reduce bills, and make them warmer, essentially. So we must widen the net, because the current documents that are out there on Warm Homes Plan talk about PV, batteries, heat pumps, and insulation. Well, there's a lot of homes that I'm aware of that are mid-terrace, Victorian, solid wall, and with north-facing roofs. So what else can we deliver to those homes? So it's a very dynamic area. The supply chain is going to continue to innovate, and we really want to deliver to as many homes as possible. But critically, we need to show policymakers and Treasury that their investment has been a wise one. So I would encourage as many technologies that are delivering savings and warm homes to be included where possible.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Okay, so we'll have some responses from Jack, Tom and Harpreet. A quick response to what you've heard, and then we'll open up for questions. Okay, it's Jack.
Great, thank you. I mean, look, there's a huge amount in there to unpack from Johan and David. I'm just going to touch on three kind of broad elements, really. The first bit is around the investment piece, and as said, the government's planning to spend about £6.6 billion on the Warm Homes Plan. But I think it's also worth reflecting on, it's not just capital investment that we need from the government, and it's also about working smarter when it comes to individual technologies, in my view. So one of those areas is VAT. By the way, I'm not preempting the budget or anything like that, just before people go setting off some hairs, and I'm not calling on Rachel to do specifically this, but maybe I am. When I worked for the REA, the Association of Renewable Energy and Clean Technology, we had this huge battle with the Treasury around VAT for domestic power sources, or energy storage, batteries, essentially, domestic batteries. They couldn't quite get it around their heads that because these things weren't selling, because of the cost of them, whacking on 20% of VAT would mean that not a single pound would be flowing back into the Treasury. From an economic point of view, it was a pretty dumb decision to do that. So we consistently made the argument, well, reduce this to 5%, help the technology mature, make sure we can bring it to commercialisation, and we can gradually raise the VAT again. I think Johan's mentioned a number of other technologies where that frustration still remains. You've got a number of products which are ready for market but not yet ready to have that sort of level of VAT. So I guess my gentle point is we don't just need kind of capital upfront investment, we need to work smarter when it comes to individual technologies, tax rates as well. The other thing as well has been mentioned, Sharon very eloquently put it, part of the reason we've suffered such an energy shock as a country when it comes to energy bills is because we've got the worst insulated housing stock in Western Europe. It means we're literally paying hundreds of pounds more through our walls and our roofs. But there's also an element here where we've tried a one-size-fits-all policy when we're approaching domestic energy for a long time. We've got very variable housing stock in this country. We need to give that flexibility to residents, to consumers, partly because they will get frustrated, but partly because you simply cannot deliver all the energy solutions we may need in different homes. So we, again, need to work smarter when it comes to kind of government projects as well. The final one, and it kind of lends itself to what David was saying about cost effectiveness and energy efficiency, and I don't think we make this argument well enough or consistently enough. Look, we're going to have to build a huge number of pylons and upgrade the grid over the coming years. In Suffolk, we are having one of those battles, should we say, on that, and I'm very much on the side of let's build the grid as quickly as possible. We otherwise won't get to net zero, but we're not making the argument enough for taking capacity off. Increasing capacity, i.e., making sure that we don't have to use the grid by electrifying or decarbonising heat in the homes and things like that. So there's an argument there, I think, that will save people money over time, it'll save the government money and investment, but it'll become more efficient, cheaper to run if we can make the argument around grid and connectivity as well from a domestic point of view too.
Thank you, Jack. Tom?
I very much agree with the one-size-fits-all doesn't work as an approach, and as someone who lives in a terrace house in Manchester, I once asked what could I do to improve the energy efficiency of my home. The rather trite answer I got back was knock it down. start again. That was from an industry expert, but it just goes that there are different things you can do depending on the housing stock, depending on your plans for the future. In Greater Manchester, for example, we do have a kind of a mixed package of things that we'd like to see over the next 5 years based on the local area energy plans that we put together. So ambitious targets, but we're looking to retrofit 140,000 homes. Covering that, 2 gigawatts of solar power, looking to find that within the conurbation. Looking to have 8,000 homes and buildings connected to heat networks. Again, there's a lot to explore there. That is ambitious, but it's something that we're seriously considering in Greater Manchester. And when it comes to heat pumps, which do have a place, of course, we're looking for 116,000 heat pumps in our homes. So from a GM perspective, we recognise, given the ambitious net zero carbon goal that we have for ourselves, that we need to do stuff smartly. And so we've looked at a package there that we think is deliverable and will benefit us from a carbon point of view, but also benefit our residents in a mixed approach there. So yeah, that would be me.
Thank you. Harpreet?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat what everyone else has said, but obviously there's been some excellent points from the panel. I think particularly around the one size doesn't fit all. I think that's really, really important. We're at a really important time now. We're at the beginning of hopefully building lots of new homes, and this is the time to get it right, isn't it? And to make sure we're talking to colleagues in sectors. And I know I'll be taking that back to ministers in terms of new homes. That's really, really important that we do that. And you might have heard in Angela's speech yesterday, she spoke about decent homes, doing more around damp and mouldy homes as well, and making sure that we do more on repairs. I mean, it's a massive issue. For example, in Huddersfield, we know that we've got a massive backlog in our social housing that we're having to deal with in terms of repairs and damp and mould. So there's far more to do in that, and she will provide more detail as the bills go through the House. And obviously, we've got the Renters' Rights Bill as well going through. And when we're back in Parliament on Wednesday, we've got the second reading of that as well. So we are pushing through this agenda. But for me, obviously what I'm hearing from colleagues is that we must speak to people in the sector and make sure we get it right, because if we don't do that now, we're going to have the same problem in a decade's time, 2 decades' time. So,
absolutely. So, opening up to questions. Who wants to go first? We'll take them in threes, I think. Oh gosh, wow, you're an eager bunch. So, who's doing the mic? Oh, there we go. So the gentleman here, I'll work my way down this side and that side. So the gentleman there, and then the lady behind. Thank you.
Hi, my name's John Newcombe. I'm the Chief Exec of the Builders Merchants Federation. So we represent builders merchants throughout the UK, but also material suppliers, about 1,000 members, and 70% of our members are SME businesses, family-owned businesses. I'm interested to hear the panel's views on Ed Miliband's plan for the clean heat market mechanism. Is a boiler tax, is taxing manufacturers the right approach for energy efficiency? Obviously, we absolutely passionately believe in retrofitting homes. A number of our major manufacturers, people like Knauf Insulation, have invested millions in new glass and rock insulation technology. Surely we would be better putting that investment and encouraging people to ensure to insulate their homes more efficiently, rather than applying taxes onto boiler manufacturers, which will lead approximately to an increase in boiler prices of £180 to £200. Ultimately, the consumer will pay that increase. So I guess it's standard insulation versus taxing manufacturers to pay and fund heat pumps. And by the way, I don't believe we'll ever get to 600,000 heat pumps, which is the Conservative target. We currently do about 60,000 heat pumps a year, as you know, compared with 1.5, 1.6 million boilers. But is taxing manufacturers really the right approach, is my question.
Wonderful. Right. And we haven't got long, so we'll have to have quick questions and then I'll encourage quick answers. So, and with regard to Ed Miliband, that is the reason Mayata couldn't be here. He's actually on the conference floor now, given his speech. So, yes.
Specifically so that.
You'll have to watch it on TV later, because obviously you can't be in two places at once. And I'm very grateful you all chose to come here instead of listening to Ed. Yes.
So, quick question. I'm Stu Horn, Head of Policy at the Energy Saving Trust. And we run a technologically neutral advice service in Scotland. We run another in Wales. And we see that they're really effective at getting things into people's home. They give people the confidence and the reassurance that those are the right solutions for them. We don't recommend solutions, we take people through their options in a tailored way. And I wanted to ask the panel, although actually in Greater Manchester there's a great retrofit service on the ground, and there are other towns that have them, but actually there's lots of England that doesn't. Do they agree that a national scheme for England would work hand in hand with the likes of Manchester's scheme, would accelerate the Warm Homes Plan?
And the lady behind, thank you so much. I'll do 3 and then we'll,
Hi, I'm Abby from Energy Saving Trust as well. So I just want to ask the panel what they're hoping to hear from the Warm Homes Plan when we kind of hear more details about it, and the kind of long-term policies that we'd like to see in place, especially for kind of the electrification of heat, because obviously electricity, for example, is much higher than gas. So what other kind of policies are the panel looking for?
Wonderful. And you'll notice we're being joined by the lovely Uma Kumaran, who has joined us. So I'm sure Uma might answer some of the questions also. But can I start with you, Johan, first on these 3?
Yeah, absolutely. I can jump in. So personally, I'm not a fan of the CHMM, partly because it makes some assumptions that there's a supply side problem, and actually it's a demand side problem. And the other side of this is that, unfortunately, when you implement mechanisms like this, they have to be technology specific. So again, you're picking winners, and so it will include heat pumps but not heat batteries, for example. So I'm not a big fan of it. I think there are bigger issues on the demand side, such as Abigail's point around pricing. How can we possibly expect people to electrify things when we artificially inflate the cost of electricity? How can we possibly, expect them to use energy flexibly when we don't reflect the value of that flexibility in the pricing of electricity? So there are some of these fundamental things that need to be fixed if we want to drive the demand side. And the boiler upgrade scheme was increased from £5,000 to £7,500 in October last year, and there was a 50% increase in the number of installs per month. There's not great demand elasticity, is there? So there are other fundamental problems we have to fix. I just wanted to pick up on the point from the panel as well earlier, that one of the key challenges I think that Labour needs to try and get right is the Conservatives struggled between DLUC and DESNZ to have a joined up approach. The House of the Future is absolutely a fundamental part of the energy system, because it's a consumer of energy. It needs to be a flexible user of that energy in the system. So we have to have DLUC or Housing Ministry and DESNZ talking, because otherwise we're going to be doing one thing over here and the other thing over here.
Jack?
I was just going to pick on the last 2 questions there collectively, because actually I think the answer is sort of the same. And I know it sounds quite boring and not quite obvious, but for your last question about how to make this work, well, really for me it's about delivery. We've seen previous schemes sort of like this, although be it not that ambitious, like the Green Homes Grant, for example, fall on its face essentially because they couldn't get the delivery right. People were complaining, usually SMEs who were trying to deliver these schemes couldn't front up tens of thousands of pounds worth of costs, and would sit there for months and months and months trying to get paid for these schemes. So eventually they just gave up and they stopped delivering it, and then the government said, oh well, it's not working anymore. So part of whether this scheme works is going to be in the delivery. We can pledge all £6.6 billion worth of funding, pledge 5 million homes. If you can't get the delivery right, there's a major problem, and that kind of links into what your ask is there. And my view is part of this is we're going to be reliant on local government on a local level. We've got a good example there with GM, but we know it's quite patchwork across the country in terms of that sort of delivery piece. So the bit, and look, that's a challenge in itself. Local government isn't exactly awash with money and resources at the moment, and we know they're under huge pressures. So we can't just kind of come from a top down above saying, no, you've got to deliver this absolutely monumental scheme. But the 2 things I think go hand in hand. To deliver this properly, we need to support local government and other kind of organisations, making sure people know about these schemes, that they can access them, that the people who are supplying the schemes and doing the work are able to access the funding in a timely and efficient way as well. So again, very, very boring, but this stuff's just got to work, and we've got to deliver it from a government perspective. Otherwise, people will get bored, fed up, and there will be another one of these green home schemes in the gutter once again, and we just cannot afford for that to happen.
Thanks, Jack. Before I take another round of questions, I thought I'd just bring and let Uma introduce herself properly. Uma is the MP for Stratford and Bow in East London, and I'm just wondering, thinking about your constituency, Uma, and drives you with regard to fuel poverty and energy efficiency with regard to your constituents in East London, which I know is a very impoverished part of London?
Thanks, Sharon. And sorry for turning up late, but late to the party, as they say, but the fun one on the panel. As Sharon said, the kind of sizable population growth in East London means that I'm in a bonus new additional seat, Stratford and Bow, and it's an incredible part of London. And it's after Canary Wharf, it's the second biggest financial hub in London. But despite that, it's still got huge pockets of inequality. And so there's this real tug of war between wanting to be big business and wanting to encourage investment, but also trying to tackle some of the root causes and asking the local businesses involved in the constituency to pay it back into the community. So I've said it's had huge population growth, which means huge amounts of houses. We are absolutely having a housing boom in Stratford and Bow. There's one part of it in Stratford in Olympic Park, which has got 94% of all of those people that live there are in high-rise. So these are brand new build homes, some of them incredibly nice. They're the ones that you read about in the glossy magazines with the concierges and gyms, but there's also social housing in some of these. There's kind of complex problems as well, though, with the new houses being built. Sustainability at the heart, so heat pumps, kind of the need for new technology and innovation, and actually some of the people buying these flats, which aren't cheap, by the way, some of them, upwards of £600,000-700,000, which is very, that's steep for a flat. The people buying these flats, if you can afford to get on the property ladder there, they're quite socially conscious. So they want to know, it's more than just kind of putting down roots for a place to call home. They want to know, how good is this for the environment? What's the organisation or the letting company, the management agency, what are they doing? They want innovation, they want heat pumps, they want sort of, for their local surrounding, a circular economy. So they're looking at this in sort of a holistic way. So as you said earlier about the demand is there, but it can't just be for people that can afford these £700,000 houses, because it's not just the sort of middle class liberals that care about this. It's everybody cares about this, and how can we make this more accessible to those people living in slightly, lesser, more disadvantaged parts of the sea? And so you need to make this kind of tech friendly. You need to make it innovative, but you need to make it genuinely affordable for people as well. And the onus is on you in this room to be communicating with people out there what's available to them, what support is there. And so the kind of 6.6 billion warm homes plan is huge, because that's a huge sum of money and it's got people's attention. But now the onus is on all of us to communicate to people, everyday people, how can they be part of this? How can they access this? How can they make their homes for the future?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Uma. Okay, so the gentleman here and the gentleman behind, and then the lady here, and I'll work down that side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Avinash Rajan, and I'm part of Trustmark, which is the only government-endorsed quality scheme for home improvement. We oversee a lot of the quality assurance related to government-funded projects in ECO, SHDF, HUB, LADS, etc. We also oversee the competence or partially oversee the competence of the tradespeople in the sector. So our question is in two parts. One is we talk about demand generation. I agree with you that demand generation is will be the big important thing that allows us to get closer to net zero, supported by government schemes. But the question really is, there's demand generation on the consumer side, but there's also skilling up and demand generation created by the supply chain. So what is the panel's thoughts around how to build the supply chain? Secondly, in terms of building the supply chain, there is supposedly a skills gap. We know that. Whether it's 200,000 or 500,000 depends on how you look at things. But the fundamental question is, how do we bring more of the people who are already associated with the trades that are associated with low carbon and with energy efficiency into that model? Because currently don't really make it easy for people to come into this.
Okay, thank you. The gentleman behind, if you just pass it back, thank you. Yeah, nice short questions if you can.
Hi there, Tom Lowe from Thermal Storage UK. As we come to the end of the gas era, which has basically powered people's homes for heating for the last 40, 45 years in the UK, we're going to need people to understand a range of different technologies. So how do we help people understand what those options are to electrify heating, for instance, in their homes?
Lovely. That was a masterclass. The lady here.
Hi, Ali Renison, SEC Newgate, but was previously a civil servant and policy advisor to Secretary of State as part of that. I just was actually wanted to pick up some of what you were talking about sort of areas where there's sort of high rises, whether they're sort of tower blocks or brand new buildings. What is some of the, I think maybe this question is more for the sort of players in the market, but and also for those in local authorities, what is the supporting infrastructure that's needed to really sort of tackle energy efficiency for those kind of community blocks, so to speak?
Excellent. Right. Who wants to go first on any of the... Yes?
Yeah, happy on the question about supply skills. There's a huge gap there. We recognise that in Greater Manchester. The Mayor is leading the way with his Manchester Baccalaureate, or MBAC for short, in that we're looking at, widening out the scope of what people can learn in that space. Locally to me, actually not far from the town hall where I'm based myself, Trafford College has been leading the way in terms of skilling up existing tradespeople who may be, traditional boiler fitters, into the new technologies as well. So they launched a green hub last year, and we're looking to replicate that kind of activity across other parts of the GM conurbation, and hopefully others can learn from it. So we feel we recognise that's that real skills gap. We know that we need to have something like the Manchester Baccalaureate to widen, get more people, especially younger people, into the market, but also have that facility there for those that have been in the trade a long time to convert to other alternative bases as well. So I thought that was a really good question. Thank you.
Anybody else on any of those questions?
I mean, all I can say about
David?
what we do is we find it very difficult to hire engineers, both design, delivery of the stuff we do, share ground loop particularly. What we do is regional, so if we win a contract with Leeds, for example, we set up a base and we engage with local people there, and we've essentially stopped hiring existingly skilled engineers and making our own, because it's more cost effective, but it also gives more back to the supply chain. We have had a stopgap where we've had to bring in people from India, because we have offices over there, to fill that gap. And they remotely designed some of our systems for us, because there is a skill gap here, particularly for what we do. But we are trying to remedy that by bringing young people in and educating them where we can. But it's a fairly drop in the ocean, if I'm honest.
Johan?
I'll jump in quickly on the skills point. Obviously, it's a clear problem. I think one of the things that is missed often is that it's worse than that, because actually the traditional gas boiler sales cycle is through the gas boiler installers. So the reason why 99% of boiler replacements are another boiler is because your current boiler broke and you called the gas boiler guy up and he came and told you need another one, or maybe he told you, don't worry, I've been told by a company unnamed that hydrogen's coming, so just wait, just put another boiler in and it'll be fine. And that is a big part of the problem. With things like heat batteries, they are installed by existing gas boiler engineers, so they can be a good sort of gateway drug, is getting gas boiler engineers also hooked on the idea that electrification can be a good thing and there is a future for their business. So we do need to give them businesses as well a lifeline, because there is a skills gap, but there are also 130,000 gas boiler engineers out there that have been installing gas boilers for decades, and they know how to install these systems really well. So if we can help them, reuse their existing skills, I think that's huge. On the demand side, just to Uma's point, I think that one of the travesty is that yes, there is a lot of consumer demand in theory. People want to change, but when it comes down to it, the demand falls away because they're put off by the high barriers because of policies that shouldn't be structured as they are, which disincentivize electrification more broadly. So there's kind of people want to change, but we're not letting them.
And Anna's question about tower blocks, was it mainly about Ali? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering what people think about. It's easy to talk about it, Victoria flats to some extent. When you have some huge tower block or some high rise, what's the particular supporting structure needed to basically provide that kind of efficiency? It's a very different set of criteria.
So for us, we do a lot of high-rise tower blocks, and it takes, assuming a lot of these are local authority stock, which they tend to be, you need to have a council that's very engaged and knowledgeable about that area, which I hate to say is somewhat of a rarity. There are some incredibly good ones and some ones that, through no fault of their own, due to funding, skills gaps, knowledge retention, they don't have that. So we try and fill that market for them by doing the funding bidding and giving them design options and giving them technical options to reduce fuel bills and get people out of fuel poverty particularly. But the councils have to lead. But from a government point of view, having those incentives there, things like the social housing decarbonisation fund's been very useful. On public buildings, public sector decarbonisation as well, and eco to an extent for tower blocks has been very useful. So it's having a secure and predictable policy landscape that supply chain and local authorities can tap into, because those blocks are the bigger investments, really.
Thank you, David. Sadly, we are out of time. They have a very quick turnaround on these rooms. I know there was a couple of people on this side didn't get your questions in. You can always try and catch one of the panel on the way out and catch them outside. Can I thank you all for coming? Can I just end on what Harpreet was saying about how this is such an exciting time? All of these new homes we're going to build, and we can build them right and make them energy efficient, and hopefully that will help with less fuel poverty. So thank you all for your attendance, and have a great conference. Thank you. Thank you.